Hello and welcome to Back at Camp, Mojave County's only outdoor television show. I'm your host, Don Martin, and on today's show we're going to talk about desert bighorn sheep in Mojave County. We're going to take you on a very special desert bighorn sheep hunt with Scottsdale resident Frank Suriano, and you're going to get to see what a great ram he was able to harvest on his once-in-a-lifetime hunt. So don't go away. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Welcome back to Back at Camp. I'm your host, Don Martin, and with me today is my good friend, Jay Chan. Jay, welcome to the show again.
Thank you, Don.
On today's show, we're going to talk about desert bighorn sheep hunting in Mojave County. Recently, Jay and I had the opportunity to go on a sheep hunt with Scottsdale resident Frank Suriano. Now, Jay, Frank had drawn one of the two tags that had been offered for Unit 15B West, and 15B West is a big unit that is located in north of Kingman. It's bounded by Highway 93 on the west, Lake Mead on the north, and Temple Bar Road on the east. Frank called us up. He's 75 years old. He said he had been putting in, he had max bonus points, and he had drawn this sheep tag, and he wanted some help, and had got our names and wanted to know if we could give him a hand. Now, we know from the past that 15B West has been a big producer of rams, and I think the largest ram ever taken in Mojave County was taken there by local guide Hubby Grounds, and they got a ram that scored over 180 points. So we know that in the past that unit has produced some really good rams, but in the last 10 years, that unit and a lot of others around in Mojave County have kind of fallen on hard times, and we haven't seen nearly as good a rams as what we used to see in there.
Yeah, in fact, like you said, in the past, we've seen a lot of rams, and they've been more or less distributed throughout the entire area. This year was very unique because it seemed like that they were more concentrated,
right?
Which made it a little bit more difficult
Yes.
to find them.
Yeah, and you know, it's weird, you know, drawing a sheep tag is really, really tough to do. The odds are sometimes as high as 100 to 1, and like in the case of Frank, you know, Frank had put in for 25 years and before he got this tag. And even though the unit is not known now to produce big, giant rams, there's sure no shortages of people applying for them there. And what we found that if a hunter doesn't get all hung up on the score and stuff and really enjoys the hunting experience, that unit's as good as it gets for providing a good sheep experience.
And I think that's you know one of the reasons that he had put in there. He had past experience. He had been in there with I think maybe 3 to 4 times
right.
on hunts with some of his friends. So he knew basically, hey, this is the type of sheep that I would be that he would be looking for, mm-hmm. and knew the quantity
right.
that he expected. So.
Well, it was good because he did have, his expectations were realistic. And like you say, one of his good friends had drawn a tag in there. And then I think it's his friend's son had drawn a tag in there. And I actually assisted him on that hunt a number of years ago. So he was a really good guy, kind of a quiet guy mm-hmm. at first, and very sincere and dedicated to our mission. And the thing that just blew me away, man, 75 years old, and he was in the best physical shape of anybody I've seen that age.
Oh, well, one of the things is that I think helps that he said that he's done for years is because he's from the valley, is that he climbs Squaw Peak 2 or 3 times a week.
Right.
And that age, climbing up and down, you need to be in great shape. I mean, well, he walked that hill so much, he was telling me, he said he breaks the nubs off of the bottom of his shoes.
Oh, well, I'll tell you what, when he showed up, there was no doubt in my mind that physically he was going to be able to do this hunt and not going to have any problems doing it. So, we, knowing that he could do it, we thought, well, okay, we'll do what we normally do. Your son, Ryan, who's a heck of a sheep glasser, spotter, he had went up and done some preseason work for us, and initially he told us about 3 rams that he had found, and actually sent me some photos of them, and and said, hey, I think maybe you might want to go up and look at these sheep. I had contacted Gunnar Erickson, who's the wildlife manager up there, spoke with Aaron Butler, who's our game specialist in Region 3, and they had both told me that after the sheep surveys, that we should expect that the oldest rams that we could find up there were probably going to score somewhere in the high 140 range to the low 150s. So knowing that that's what they had seen on survey, and I know Gunnar was pretty right on that hey, when I asked him, I said, do you think there's a 160 ram in there? And he was fairly confident when he said, no, I don't think so. So we knew from our aspect as a guide that this was the kind of ram. We wanted to find a ram with some age, and we wanted to find a ram that would score from the high 40s to the low 50s. That was going to be the best we could find in there. And so that we set off on our mission. We also found out, and we finally got to meet the other hunter in our group, or the other hunter in our unit. His name was Brett Moran. He was from Prescott. He's a bow hunter.
Yeah, that's quite a challenge to try and take a sheep with a bow, but he did meet that challenge and was successful at it.
Yeah, the day that we talked to him, we showed him some pictures of sheep that we had taken pictures of, and it was a nasty, foggy, rainy day, and he was telling us that he didn't even bring a rifle on his hunt, and we agreed that if we found a ram that Frank wasn't interested in, that we would gladly call him. We exchanged phone numbers and said, okay, if we see a ram that Frank doesn't want, we'll call you and you can come chase it. And he offered right back. He says, hey, if I see a big ram and I can't get to it, I'll call you guys, because Frank was using a gun. So, that was kind of neat. I mean, it was hunters working together.
Right.
And what was interesting, we didn't even start our hunt till almost the second week of the season, because we were still tied up on the Kaibab.
Right. I think it was like maybe the 10th. Was it the 10th?
Somewhere
in that neighborhood.
Yeah, because we had decided in talking to Frank, we said, we don't need to start on December 1st. It's a month-long season, and typically we get sheep 10 to 14 days. And so, in talking with Frank was very good about it and said, hey, we'll go when you think we should start. And I said, well, maybe the archery will get done, and then that way there would be no other hunters in the unit, and we would basically have the whole unit to ourselves. So, so we decided that that's what we were going to do. Now, you and I have been in that unit a number of times, the latest being in 2010, when we had a gentleman from Glendale named Tom Brandt. And boy, did we have a tough hunt in 2010 in that unit.
We took that out last couple of days in December, I think.
Yeah, we just had a heck of a time, finding mature rams. We found rams, and we kept thinking we were going to see a great big ram in there, and we hunted for days and days and days. And I know we had Dan Reed came up there, Gene Chambers come up there, a guy from Las Vegas, Guy Rohrback, he came up there.
Johnny Hoff, I think.
Johnny Hoff was there. Mark Schwarzkopf was up there. Mike Samer was up there.
So lots of great eyes.
Yeah, guys
that assist with glassing.
Yeah, that know sheep and know how to glass. And we turned that unit inside out, and we just couldn't find what we thought was a big ram for Tom. And I know Tom was kind of made a statement a couple times. He says, I don't know if you guys are ever going to let me shoot a sheep. And he was getting tired, and it was a tough hunt. I mean, eventually we got a great sheep on that hunt. He was broomed off real short on one side, but he was real long on the other. Tom made a great shot. We got it on video, and so it was a good hunt, like they most always end up. But man, that was a tough hunt in 2010.
Especially the terrain that sheep was on.
Oh, yeah, he was on the biggest, nastiest mountain in that unit, and I know when we packed him out, it like to kill me. I think I ended up in the hospital after that because I had pneumonia. and I packed some of that sheep down off the mountain, and I thought, whew, but it just about did me in. But it was a good hunting experience. We had a good time. Like I said, it surely went long, but we got it done. So now this year though we got Frank coming up. We're going to start later in the season, and you had some commitments that you had to take care of initially. So Gene Chambers, who's been on, I don't know, I think he's been over 20 hunts with us.
He's been on a lot.
Yeah, and he's 77 years old, and he comes out there and goes with us, and he's a great guy to have around, and he'll do anything you ask him to do. We ask him to move vehicles, we ask him to glass, anything. He would pack out a sheep if you'd let him.
Yeah, he's willing.
He's more than willing. He loves to sheep hunt, and boy, we're fortunate and glad to have him in our sheep camps, and I've had to have him all these years. So, and he's been in that unit before, and he knows. He actually used to guide, and he's guided hunters in 15B West. So, he's familiar with the country. He knows a lot about the sheep in that country. So, like I say, it was a pleasure to have. We're going to take a little break right now, I think, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the hunt and the experience that we had with Frank Soriano, just a super nice guy. Folks, you don't want to go away. We got some great pictures to show you of desert bighorn sheep in 15B West, and we're going to tell you all the details on how Frank got his once-in-a-lifetime ram on a cold, cold Sunday in 15B West. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Welcome back to Back at Camp. I'm your host, Don Martin. With me today is Jay Chan, and Jay was recently with me on a sheep hunt in 15B West where we were assisting Scottsdale resident Frank Soriano on his once-in-a-lifetime hunt. Now, Jay, when we left, we were starting to talk about Frank's hunt. Your son Ryan had been up there and did some preseason work and found 3 rams on a big nasty mountain. And so the opening day of the season, it was just Frank and I, and we made a climb up that mountain to get close enough so I could really take a look at those sheep and maybe get some pictures of them. And what I found was there was only 2 rams in that group. The smallest ram that Ryan had found had left. So we got up there. I think we got within about 600 yards of the sheep, set up the spotting scope. It was a beautiful day, no wind, sunny. It was nice. And I looked at those sheep and I found that they were both 6.5 years old. Both of them had ear tags, which means they had been captured at some point in time. But the biggest of the 2 was wearing a radio collar. And we've seen this in the past, and especially in that area because they're doing that Highway 93 study. They're capturing and tagging and collaring a lot of sheep to monitor the movements from units to units and where they go in there. One of the things that Frank and I talked about was about the possibility of having to harvest a ram that was wearing a radio collar. And I know from talking to Game and Fish that the cost that it takes to capture, collar a ram, those collars are over $3,000. When you figure in helicopter time, people time, Game and Fish has a ton of money invested in those sheep. And Frank and I decided that no matter what, we were not going to take a radio collared ram. So after spending most of the morning up on that big mountain, we walked off, and those 2 sheep were up there sleeping on the side of the hill. It was pretty neat, but like I say, we'd have never known the sheep were there if Ryan hadn't found them on his preseason work up there. Right,
and that is one thing that he does do. He enjoys when December comes around because he loves being out there looking for them.
Yeah, and he finds them, and like I say, he was spot on these rams, and we looked at them and we said, okay, we're going to pass. So the next day, pretty uneventful. Then on day 3, Gene Chambers comes up, Saki Kajanis comes up. They're going to help us glass. And we go out in the morning and we glass, don't see much. Coming back down a wash, 4 rams run across the road in front of Saki. And we stop and we get our first look had a mature, good-sized mature ram, 15B West. There was actually 3 of the 4 rams in that group were mature rams. One that really caught my eye was wearing a kind of an orange ear tag. It had number 9 on it. And he was a great-looking sheep. And you know, I was trying to do the math on him, and I thought he was going to be one of the top rams in the unit. But it was day 3, and I wanted Frank to experience a sheep hunt, not just come out there and say, oh, hey, that's a good ram, shoot him. You know, we didn't. We found another ram that was with him that didn't have an ear tag or anything on him, obviously a little older. I had aged that ram. I thought he was about 6.5 years old. And this other ram that was with him I thought was probably 8. But he was so broomed off. And for those that don't know what broom means, these rams, they bang heads and hit rocks and everything. They actually break off their horn from the ends. And when they broom them off, then they get short. And most people are looking for rams that got a little more length on them than what that ram did. So we decided that we were going to pass them after getting our photographs. Didn't go down to wash a couple hundred yards, and Gene Chambers found another ram that was up there. And it was a nice ram, but again, it looked like a younger ram, so we passed him. Well, we said, well, okay, now we've seen some mature rams. We felt pretty good about it. And so then the weather came. And boy, oh boy, oh boy. We got rain, snow, hail, sleet, winds 20 to 40 miles an hour. And for you had to go because you had to go to California for some personal commitment over there.
Right, right.
So, you know, so we spent 3 days up there, and we did not see a single sheep. You know, we're sitting there thinking, these sheep must be waiting for Jay to get back, you know, because they're sure not out in the open where we could see them. And we were looking in areas that we had previously seen these sheep. So, you know, it wasn't like we were different areas, but the sheep were just gone. So, you know, we spend the time. We actually get to talk to Brett and at his camp, and he's telling us about his sheep ordeal up there with the bow. And so then the weather, we finally get a break. The rain quits. It's not real bad windy, sun shining, and all of a sudden the sheep start showing back up again. So you're back out there with us, and we make our trek all through the unit again, and we're seeing sheep, but just nothing big.
Right. And it just took a little while to find them, but patience.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, that's what you got to have when you're sheep hunting. You know, they give you all that time, and a lot of times you might need it. One of the things we did find was Game and Fish had transplanted this in 2012, had transplanted a number of sheep out of Unit 15D, which is out by Oatman, up to that unit up there to get some diversity in the genetics and to supplement that herd up there. We did find a lot of those sheep that had been transplanted, and you know, they seemed to be doing real well. Game and Fish told me that they had lost one collared ram, to a mountain lion, and then we subsequently found out that Brett had, on his archery hunt, had actually taken one of the transplanted rams that had been brought up there from 15D. So he was done, and now there was just us, you know.
Which makes it better, because now what happens is now the hunter doesn't have to worry about someone taking a ram that he may be looking at. Right.
So, and you know, speaking of the archery hunts, you know, we know what it takes to kill a sheep with a bow. We've taken a great ram in that unit. Dr. Mike Wall killed a real big ram in there a number of years ago with Larry Soleil, and I know in the picture you're in there, very young Jay Chan is in that picture, and Larry did a fantastic job of tracking that ram and actually recovering it. And then we also assisted a guy across the road, Brian Ham, on archery sheep hunt in 15C North, and he killed an absolute whopper ram, scored 164 points. And again, Larry Soleil was the head guide on that. So we know what it takes for anybody to take a ram. So even though the ram that Brett took wasn't a giant, just to take a ram with a bow, I think is a huge accomplishment.
Oh, absolutely. That would be very tough to do with archery. But hunters do it all the time, and they do get opportunities at shots. But it is patience and persistence.
Yep, especially if you're toting around sharp stick and strings. Well, now so Brett's gone, the weather's turning nice. We make another search through the unit. We don't find anything bigger than number 9. Number 9 keeps popping up as he's the biggest sheep we've seen. He's the biggest sheep we've seen. So we decide that we're going to make a play for number 9 if we can relocate him. So we call up a couple of friends of ours. Kinson Lee come from Las Vegas. He come down to help us, and it was on a Sunday morning. We left right at crack of dawn, and we decided that you and Frank would go on the west side of a big ridge, and then Kinson and I go on the east side, and Gene was going to drive the truck and pick us up at the end of the day, and we were going to see if we could find this ram band. And so we're in communication back and forth, and I don't think, had you guys seen anything initially?
We had not seen anything in the morning. In the
mornings, yeah. So, and I had found the group that you had found the night before, the group of 5, and then Kinson and I are working down a ridge, and I'm glassing, and 700 yards below us, I see a collared ram, had a radio collar and ear tag on. Well, he's obviously not a shooter. While we're watching, Kinson spots another ram about 300 yards down the slope, and it was a young ram, and we looked at him and said, no, he's not a shooter. But we started talking. We said, well, maybe there's more sheep in here, and we knew that this was the general area where that ram band with number 9 had come out of. So Kinson and I slipped down the backside of that ridge, and we popped over the top, and 50 yards from us, 7 rams bedded on a sunny hillside, and one of the rams turns and looks up the hill, sees us, jumps up. Well, we all sit down. The ram band jumps up and they run, but they only go about 480 yards, and they stop and they start looking around. Well, they couldn't see us. Eventually, they laid down. They just bedded down. Well, we got a hold of you guys and said, okay, number 9 was in that group, and he was looking great. And I know I took a bunch of photographs of him while he was bedded, and I took pictures of his ram band, and we got a hold of you guys and said, come on over here. The problem was you're a long, long ways off.
Like you said, only 3.5 hours away.
Yeah.
Of walking to get from one side of the drainage to the other, and then back up the slopes.
Well, you finally made it over there in your initial stalk. One of the rams saw you, spooked the rest of the herd, and off they went, and they ran another mile. We were able to relocate them, and you and Frank went in there. You found him again, and right before sundown, Frank got his shot.
Yeah, and that was pretty amazing because, like you said, just before sundown, we were crunched for time.
Right.
But we was able to get him on a rock so that he'd get a good rest, and
he got a shot at 100 yards.
He got a shot at 100 yards.
Hit him.
Yeah.
But didn't put him down. Got another shot at 112 yards. Shot over him. But you saw the ram go over a ridge, and you relocated him, took Frank in there, and made the finishing shot on him.
Yes, and then.
And we were tired. The next day, Danny Reed and my brother Gary and Brian Gano come up, and we go up and we take pictures, pack that sheep. They packed that sheep out for us, which we were really thankful for. We bring him to Kingman. Game and Fish ages this sheep at 7 years old. Says he scores 153 and change and 151 net, and told us he was the 3rd largest ram taken in the last 7 years in that unit. So we were very, very happy about that.
And Frank Siriano, he was very happy too.
Real good.
That it ended.
Okay, we got to go. I want to thank Jay for being here today talking about this sheep hunt. Folks, 15B West, tough sheep unit. Some nice rams in there. If you get a chance, draw a tag and give me a call. I'll take you up there. We'll bring Jay with us. Till next week, this is your host, Don Martin, saying keep your fishing line fresh, your firearms oiled. We'll see you next week back at camp.